truckers, what is the creepiest thing you've ever seen on the road? I was driving through a desolate part of Arizona late at night when I saw a figure standing on the side of the road. It was a woman in a white dress, completely still, just staring into the desert. No car, no buildings nearby, nothing. I drove past her, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, she was gone. I didn't see her move, didn't see her walk away, just gone. One night I was driving through a foggy patch of road in the middle of nowhere. My headlights barely cut through the mist, and all of a sudden, this giant figure appeared out of nowhere. It was walking slowly across the road, too big to be a person, but too upright to be an animal. I slammed the brakes, but it disappeared into the fog before I could get a better look. I still don't know what it was. I pulled into a rest stop one night, needing a break. There was a single car in the lot, but no one around. As I parked, I noticed a guy sitting in the driver's seat of the receipt, but he wasn't moving. So his head was tilted back and his mouth was wide open, like he was screaming, but there was no sound. I stayed in my cab for a few minutes, watching him. Eventually, I just left because something about him gave me the chills. Once, in the middle of nowhere, I saw a man walking along the highway at about 2 a.m. He was dragging a black bag behind him, and I swear, it looked like there was something heavy inside, almost human-shaped. I slowed down as I passed, and he looked right at me, dead in the eyes. I've never been more freaked out on the road. I was driving through the mountains in Colorado when I saw what looked like a person standing on a rock ledge way up above the road. They were just standing there, motionless, watching the cars pass by. There was no way for anyone to get up there, but they were there, clear as day. I checked my mirrors as I drove past, but they were gone. I once saw a guy standing in the middle of the road in the pouring rain at 3 a.m., arms outstretched like he was trying to stop cars. I slowed down but didn't stop because something felt off. As I passed him, I noticed his clothes were torn and his face was completely blank, no emotion, just staring. I called it in, but never heard what happened after. One night, I was driving down a dark, empty road when a pair of headlights appeared behind me. They got closer and closer, tailgating me for miles. I pulled over to let them pass, but the car just stopped behind me. No one got out, no movement at all. I took off again and the car followed, keeping a distance. So then, after a few more miles, it just turned off the road and disappeared into the darkness. I saw a man sitting on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, staring out into the woods. He didn't look at me as I drove by, didn't move an inch, just sat there. Hours later, on my way back, he was still there, in the exact same position. I have no idea what he was doing, but it creeped me out enough to call it in. I was driving late at night through the Utah desert when I saw lights in the sky. They weren't planes or helicopters, just these hovering, glowing orbs moving in weird patterns. I pulled over to watch, but they suddenly shot off in different directions and disappeared. I've seen a lot of weird stuff on the road, but that one still gives me chills. I once saw a group of people standing in a circle in a field off the highway. They were wearing dark cloaks and had their heads down, like they were chanting or something. There was a fire in the middle of the circle, but it was small, barely visible from the road. I didn't stop to investigate, just kept driving as fast as I could. Driving through a thick forest late at night, I saw what looked like a pair of eyes reflecting back at me from the trees. They were high up, way higher than any animal's eyes should be. As I got closer, they disappeared, and when I passed the spot, there was nothing there. No animal, no branches, nothing, just empty road. I was on a long haul in the middle of nowhere when I saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. I never pick people up, but something about this guy was off. As I passed, I looked in my rearview mirror, and he was just standing there, staring at me. No reaction to my truck, no thumb out, just standing there like a statue. I sped up and didn't look back. One time, I pulled into a truck stop in Nevada, and there was this old RV parked off to the side. The windows were covered with thick curtains, but I could see shadows moving inside. After a few minutes, someone opened the door, and a guy came out, but he wasn't alone. So he had something over his shoulder, like a large, wrapped-up bundle. He tossed it in the back of a car and drove off. So no one else seemed to notice, but it still haunts me. I was driving through a remote part of New Mexico when I saw a kid standing on the side of the road, alone. No car, no adults around, just this kid staring at my truck as I drove by. I slowed down, thinking I might need to help, but something about the way they were just standing there didn't feel right. I kept driving, but I think about that kid sometimes. Driving through the Appalachians late at night, I saw what looked like an old man sitting on a porch of an abandoned house. So his face was gone, and he was just rocking back and forth in a chair. There were no lights, no sign of life around, but he was there, clear as day. I passed by again the next day, and the house was boarded up like no one had been there for years. One night, while driving through an empty stretch of highway in the Midwest, I saw what looked like a car with its hazards on, pulled over to the side. So as I got closer, I realized there was no one inside the car and no sign of anyone around. The hazard lights were just blinking in the middle of nowhere. I kept going, but it gave me the creeps. I was driving through a foggy patch in Oregon, and suddenly this man appeared out of nowhere, running across the road in front of my truck. Slammed on the brakes, but when I stopped, he was gone. No sign of anywhere. I looked around with my flashlight, but there was nothing, just empty road and fog. I was parked at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere, trying to get some sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard a knocking on my door. When I looked out, there was no one there. I figured it was the wind or something, but the knocking kept happening every few minutes. Every time I checked, no one was around. I left that rest stop real quick. I saw a figure standing in the middle of the road late one night. It looked like a man, but he was dressed in all black and his face was hidden under a hood. I slowed down, thinking maybe he needed help, but as soon as my lights hit him, he just vanished. The one second he was there, the next he was gone. I still can't explain it. Hello. One night, I saw a man walking on the side of the highway with a shovel over his shoulder. It was 3 a.m. and there was no one else around. As I passed, he looked at me with this blank expression, like he was in a trance. I called it in, but I never heard if they found him or what he was doing out there with a shovel in the middle of the night. I was driving through Texas when I saw what looked like a pair of glowing red eyes in the distance. As I got closer, the eyes disappeared, but I swear I saw something big moving just off the side of the road. It was too fast to be an animal, and too strange to be anything I could explain. I didn't stop to find out. I will. It was driving through the deep woods in Oregon one night, pitch black outside, and suddenly my headlights caught a figure standing at the edge of the trees. What it looked like a person, but their eyes were reflecting the light in a weird way, almost glowing. I slowed down to get a better look, but they disappeared back into the woods before I could really see them. Galgaby chills. I was parked overnight at a truck stop, and around 3 a.m., I heard what sounded like footsteps outside my cab. I looked out the window and saw a man just standing there, staring up at my truck. Didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there for a good 5 minutes before walking off into the darkness. I couldn't sleep after that. Once I saw what I thought was a deer on the side of the road late at night, but as I got closer, it stood up on 2 legs and ran into the woods. It moved way too fast to be a person, but it definitely wasn't a deer either. I don't know what it was, but I've never driven through that area at night again. I was on a long haul in the middle of a storm, and out of nowhere, I saw what looked like a little girl standing on the side of the road. No houses, no buildings, just this girl in a white dress, soaking wet. I slowed down, but when I got closer, she was gone. I even stopped to check, but there was no sign of her anywhere. I once saw what looked like a funeral procession driving down a highway at 2 a.m. There were about 10 cars, all with their headlights on, driving slowly in a perfect line. But as I got closer, I realized there were no people in the cars. They were just driving empty down this dark road. I still don't know what I saw that night. I was driving through the desert in Nevada when I saw a light hovering in the sky. It wasn't a plane or a helicopter, just this bright, pulsating light that followed my truck for miles. It eventually shot off into the sky, but it freaked me out so bad I had to pull over to calm down. I'm not one to believe in UFOs, but that night changed my mind. So one night I was driving through a heavy fog in the Midwest, and I saw what looked like a person standing in the middle of the road. I slowed down, but as I got closer, they just vanished. 1 second they were there, the next they were gone. I drove through that spot the next day, and there wasn't a house or anything nearby. I was driving through a mountainous area in West Virginia when I saw a group of people standing on the side of the road, holding hands in a circle. It was almost midnight, and they were dressed in old, tattered clothes like something out of a horror movie. I passed by as fast as I could, but I swear I could hear them chanting as I drove away. I once saw a guy walking along the highway in the middle of nowhere, dragging a large bag behind him. The bag looked heavy, like there was something inside, and he was struggling to carry it. I slowed down to get a better look, but when I did, he just stopped and stared at me. I sped up and got out of there fast. I was driving through a long stretch of highway in Texas when I saw what looked like a hitchhiker in the distance. As I got closer, he suddenly ran out into the road, forcing me to slam on my brakes. But when I stopped, there was no one there, just empty road and silence. I checked my mirrors, got out, but there was no sign of anyone. Are you already subscribed? No? Make sure you do. And also please like this video. Helps us create more awesome videos. Thanks.